Okay, now let's talk about the Notario. Now, if you're thinking this is a guy at my bank who stamps my documents, the one with the short sleeve shirt and the pocket protector with the multicolored pins in it and the glasses, you can forget about that right now. Because first, this guy's or girl is a law school graduate. That's 7 years right there, trust me. Then he or she is going to spend another 3 years working as an appointed Notario's office assistant, learning the business, so to speak. And then they're going to have to have studied for and sat for and passed a really rigorous exam. I don't know, but I've heard it's pretty bad. This is just to qualify to become a Notario. So why all the hoopla? Well, maybe it's because Notarios are appointed for life by the state's governors to represent the interests of the government in every single property transaction that goes down here in Mexico. For life. So this is no small job. This is trust. Without him or her, their work, and their stamp of approval, nothing's going to move. And the government relies on them to make absolutely certain that things like Punta Banda and the other real estate fiascos in the past, they never happen again. Which is why I constantly tell people that believing these stories of property that are somehow just going to disappear, be taken over by the government, it's hogwash. It can't happen down here. These guys do virtually everything that you rely on real estate agents and brokers to do in the U.S. for you, and they usually do it via private companies. Well, that's all handled by the Mexican Notario down here. Now, quick bit of Jeopardy trivia. Those wannabes, it may all be for nothing. The day may never come that they can be an actual government appointee, because while the governors appoint these people for life, they also give them the ability to pass the position down to their heirs, their kids, their daughters and sons and grandchildren if they want, as long as they have the experience and educational requirements. So the Notario that you're using today, he or she just might have been appointed by the governor who appointed his or her grandfather. I know, it's trivia, but I thought it was fun. Kind of breaks up the monotony. Where else are you going to learn silly stuff like this one here? Yeah, sorry. Back to the case. So if that's the case, if the Notario is going to verify and certify every single aspect of this real estate transaction, then why can't I just go to the seller directly and do the deal? I mean, the Notario is going to make sure it's all legal, right? I mean, why do we even need real estate people at all? Well, if you think about it, it's pretty simple. If the seller's agent is watching out for the seller, and the Notario is watching out for the government, who's watching out for you? Now you're starting to understand. You're in a foreign country. You don't speak the language, or perhaps limited. And you're trying to negotiate the most complex and probably most expensive deal that you'll ever do in your life. And you've got Google or YouTube as an advisor, and me, who you don't even know. And you're trusting the seller, a man whose sole objective is to get to as much money as he possibly can for his property, and an overworked, underpaid governmental employee of a foreign government to protect your interests. All this while you won't even buy a blender on Amazon unless you've double and triple and quadruple checked that it's the best price, it's on sale, and the shipper is going to pay shipping both ways if it doesn't work out. You'll do that with Amazon, but you won't do that with a multi-thousand, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 investment in real estate. Anyway, that's the job of the Notario. And again, his or her participation is absolutely, unequivocally mandated. Mandatory. Caveat time again. Although the Notario is required, buyers always have the choice of which one they want to use. Now, typically it's mutually agreed upon which one to use, especially if you're in a big development like this, or any developer like Rancho Costa Verde. Why? Well, because they've done this thousands of times before. It's almost boilerplate. They know these people, they know the Notarios, and they have a rapport with them. And because there are certain, let's say, tax implications involved in the sale, so the developer is going to know which one is most beneficial when it comes to calculating these things. So, know that although the seller is always going to recommend his or her own Notario, if it's not because of something concrete like obtaining a beneficial capital gains estimate, for example, for their property, or something they can show you is absolutely, unquestionably beneficial to you, Don't be bullied into using their Notario. You don't have to, especially if it's a single property, single seller outside of a development like Rancho Costa Verde. Remember, this is poker. I've said it 1,000 times. The seller needs to believe that he needs to sell more than you need to buy. Simple as that. But in the end, it's up to you. As long as he or she is a duly appointed official notario, you're going to be okay. Now, just what is this notario going to need to process the sale and create a fideicomiso for you, in addition to the documents I've already mentioned, of course? And remember, the seller is required to produce a lot of these documents. Well, first, he's going to need government-issued IDs for both of you. That's just basic. And you got to include any powers of attorney that you may have if counsel is representing you, for example. They got to be in there. And then there's the official land appraisal that other purchases and transfer fees and taxes are going to be based on. Now, this appraisal can be done either by a designated corredor público, who is typically an attorney licensed by the Federal Execute, or it can be done by a bank. Now, the difference between the two is simply the fact that the corredor público, he's going to report the fair market value of the property more simply and quickly than a bank can, because banks use people like architects and engineers and other officials, professionals to establish a value, and that takes time. But either way, it has to be done. And the notario is the one who arranges for all this, with the fee for it, of course, that's either going to be attached to the notario's base fee, or it could be put in the closing costs. But either way, check to see that you're not being charged for it twice. It's not in both places. Then there's the existing certified deed, or the escritura of the property, which is, again, one of the things that should be provided by the seller. Now, after all that's done, after all that's taken care of, the notario still has to round up property tax receipts for the last 5 years, proof of cancellation of any pre-existing mortgages or loans on the property, certificates confirming that all outstanding bills for services, including water and electricity and hired help and everything else, they've all been paid. They're called certificates of non-debt. Identification and financial details of the bank that you want to process the fideicomiso, and all the deposits while this is all going. Where are they going to go? The notario needs to know that. The buyer's permit to purchase, or convivio, and all the other details necessary for the notario to process and prepare and file the fideicomiso. He's going to need all that. Big list, huh? Well, you should see a documentation that's required for even purchases in the U.S. But your realtor, again, usually handles all that, so you never see that. But it's a lot of work. He earns his fee. And you still think you don't need counsel here? Remember, buying that blender in Amazon, I don't know. Not for me to say. Okay, so some of the fees for these things are the responsibility of the seller, and some of them are the responsibility of the buyer, but which one goes to which? Well, the answer to that is going to depend on, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? Do you want the property, or do you just have to have the property? And finally, just how good a poker player are you? Because remember, I said they're apportioned, and we're going to look at who's responsible for what and how you can minimize fees in the next video. But until then, please, again, like I always say, hit that like button. It's the only way that other people are going to know that we're here to help them for free, just like we're trying to help you. Without you, what we're doing here, it's just a big waste of time. So please, hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.